Alright guys, welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Gaming Compute. Sorry for the delay. Yesterday I thought I posted and then it turned out I didn't post anything, and now I'm like, shoot, I need to post. So, yeah, but it was kind of lengthy. I didn't finish writing the descriptions in, but on this podcast we talk about money, finances, side hustles, overall career related things, job related things, education related things, pretty much anything in that realm of basically your financial future, yours and mine, right? I tend to try not to talk about things that don't really apply to me. I'm not trying to do that just like in some kind of like an egotistical way or anything. I know that there are a lot of topics I don't discuss, but usually I like to talk to my own direct experiences, just mainly because a lot of times I think it might help some people to hear directly certain experiences that a person has had. I've described my career path before, but as there's a lot of stuff going on about like student loans, student debt, career, job changing, layoffs, stuff like that, I do want to speak to what I have experienced as far as anything based in the past of from my past experiences compared to like what's going on now, kind of like a compare and contrast, but just on a lot of different little levels. I think the easiest place to start this discussion is with school, because I feel like that's something that a lot of us have in common. Now, because in the US, it's mandatory to get some form of schooling, and I went a pretty traditional school route. I started out in public schools as a very young kid, just on the dates expected. But because I moved from the Midwest to the West Coast, I was usually 1 year older than most of the kids in my class once I was in California. And I have another friend who had the same experience. He was from Tennessee, and in some places there's like a birthday cutoff of when you start kindergarten, and so I had already started, but I know when other kids were like 5 in kindergarten, I was 6. But I don't feel like that gave me an advantage in any way. I don't feel like I had like an age advantage. It was kind of a little bit of an insecurity to me at a certain point. I wasn't always like the oldest kid, but a lot of times, like once you get to like a little bit higher grades, people start maybe thinking you got left back one year or something, which wasn't the case. I passed my classes all the way through. I think the first class I had to repeat was my second semester of senior year. I think it was senior year algebra 2. I think that's what it was. Or junior year. Maybe it was junior year algebra 2, because then the beginning of my senior year I had to take a remedial version of that. I didn't take summer school. I think it was I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember my schedule. But I do remember that the reason why I didn't pass that class was because of a miscommunication or a misunderstanding on my part. I was still connected to a church back then, and we used to go on these annual mission trips. So once you were in 8th grade, you were able to qualify to go to these mission trips, just age-wise. And if you could do the fundraising and, the money, part of things over time, like they would start planning per kid per year, like for like a year in advance or something, maybe even a year and a half in advance, so that it was just like small installments, couple hundred or so every year, and usually parents were contributing, and we were doing a lot of stuff Sundays, and group car washes, group veggie breakfast burritos, selling Band-Aids, all kinds of like random stuff, just getting donations, and the money just came and we were able to go. So every year from 8th grade through my first year of college, I went on a Mexico mission trip that was planned by the church. And this year, in my junior year of high school, I was at a public school. I was no longer at the private school that was connected. The private school used to just give us days off for the trip, and there was like nothing to make up work or nothing. I don't remember having any process like that, or maybe they just let you make it up after. I don't remember at all. But I remember once I went to a different school, I was like, well, I really want to go on this trip. And it was like a 10-day trip, so a lot of it was like most of like 1 week of a whole school year. And so like I remember that experience, and having to repeat that class for that reason. Just a second. Sorry, I had to close my window. But yeah, having to repeat that class for that specific reason. And then, I think in college, I did good in all my community college classes, did good in all my university classes when I transferred. And when I got a master's, I think there was one class I had to repeat one term. I don't know if that's right. I think there was one class in my I don't know though. That doesn't sound right. But I feel like there was one class that I wasn't doing well, unless I'm confusing that with the PhD program I wasn't able to complete. But I'm not sure. But I don't think so though. I don't know. It just sounds. I feel like I was talking to my thesis chair before, and looking at my transcripts. We would look at my transcripts whenever they would come in, and then I believe he saw my grades and thought, my GPA was solid, because he remembered I didn't have like any D's or anything, but I was concerned that I had a couple C's here and there, but not a lot. Like my GPA was like over a 3.0. But I honestly did have struggles in school, but it's just like I was able to stay pretty motivated and focused, and I wouldn't say just skirt by. Like I was able to get by. I had strengths and weaknesses for sure, and a lot of fluctuations with my energy levels and my focus levels, and just kind of like, I've always had this kind of brain fog on occasions, and then sometimes I'd have like poor sleep, and then other times like, my mood would kind of be a little low, maybe other times pretty high, and energetic. I think that's normal for everybody, but because I spent so much of my life studying, I definitely noticed that, as it was with my schoolwork, because I didn't really do much else. Like I studied all day, went to school all the time, and I had hobbies and stuff, but most of it was like music, playing guitar, did some sports and stuff. I hang out with friends, go out to movies, go bowling, that kind of thing, go to the beach, that kind of thing, play a little like pickup games here and there, but that's kind of mostly what I did for the majority of my years up until college, and even during and through grad school. I pretty much had the same hobbies, so I was pretty busy all the time. But I did notice that, yeah, like my energy is still pretty much similar to how it is today. Like I'd still have nights where I couldn't sleep good. It wasn't every night, but I'd still have time periods where I wasn't sleeping well, time periods where I had just all kinds of different stuff going on. Like that part of my life has not really changed, and the way that it impacts my current work, it's still the same thing. Like some days I'll be working and I'm just like so foggy, but now because of the type of work I do, I can usually tailor my day and my schedule and my calendar to kind of meet me where my energy naturally is at. I feel like the worst time when I wasn't able to manage it at all was definitely what contributed, one of the bigger things that contributed to me not being able to complete my PhD program, because by the third year in, I was just not fully functioning. I would have like pain concerns, some severe sleep concerns. I had all kinds of things going on that I'd never experienced at that level before, of just like severity of other stuff that was making it hard to like study and focus, and like I would just shut down, and that was different for me. That was the first time in my life I'd ever experienced that. And the main things I can remember that changed in my life around that time period, if these aren't the only contributing factors, but three of the big ones that I'd never had in my life before. So I would say my least active years when I was studying were my junior, senior year of high school, because I wasn't taking daily PE anymore. And, well, no, not junior, senior. I think it would have been like, grades 9, 10, 11, 12. No, I think grades 9, 10 we had PE. So I think it was grade 11 and 12. I had finished my PE credits. And so my junior, senior year, I had that issue with I think that definitely contributed to my mood in my junior, senior year of high school, just not having daily PE, because I did experience like a form of depression that wasn't really for a major reason. Like nothing was really happening. Like I was kind of lonely, but it was like whatever. And the schoolwork was pretty intensive, but I did well in most of my classes, with the exception of like a couple that I really found really difficult and hard, and it was really hard for me to focus and everything. And I wasn't doing well on some of the exams and stuff. Like it wasn't a matter of spending time studying or, doing the material. It was more so getting through the material and comprehending it and absorbing it. Like I just wasn't, I noticed in high school I had less ability to kind of just do that, and during those 2 years specifically. And I do think it possibly contributed to just not having as much athletic things going on. I would come home from school, I think most of my junior year, I'd come home from school and just like sleep from like 3 something to like almost like dinner or so. It was a pretty rough year, just because, it was just a big adjustment. I didn't really have like bullying. There was nothing like that going on. And I wasn't like flunking out my classes, but I wasn't like enjoying myself. Like that's the first year I remember ever having to like pull myself kind of out of bed, and like, I'd be like jogging down the street because like school was about to start and I was running late often. Just kind of like the typical signs of burnout. It was just like, but I was in school, so I wasn't really taking days off. My senior year was a little bit better because I think I had 0 period to like whatever, I think till like 5th period or something. So I think the first semester I got out at 2 p.m. and then I had finished so many of my classes early or on time that I would get out at lunch. So I would get out, I would go to school like 7 to like noon. The last semester of my senior year. And so it was kind of like, okay, the benefits of all that hard work did pay off. And I did kind of feel like that was reward. Like I got rewarded back in like time. And some of my classes were a little easier too. And, you know, I was just preparing for college and all that. And, yeah, the first 3 years I went to community college. That went well. Then after that, transferred to UC Irvine. That went well. I was there for like 2 years. Did pretty good in my classes, and then transferred to Cal State LA for my master's. I feel like I took a year off to study for the GRE and then applied, but I don't remember. That might have been the other time after. I don't know. I think I took a year off to study for the GRE. I did have some depression during that year, but I started doing P90X and like insanity workouts, and I was like, you know, working at the place where I used to go to school up until 10th grade. And then my I got into grad school at Cal State LA for psychology master's program, and my goal was just to go into research. I like hearing sciences types of research. Mostly studied auditory perception, but through psychology and like cognitive science kind of focus. And you know, I wanted to get a job. Basically doing research in labs and just geeking out and writing papers and maybe books. That's kind of what I wanted to do. Maybe teach, but I couldn't care less about that. I just like the writing and stuff. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do. But then I'm going to talk about this in a later episode when I start talking in the section about like the recession impact. But I would say the way it impacted school specifically was, you know, the student loans weren't coming fast enough. It was a little stressful because it's like, can I take the class? And then you're not really on the roster because you haven't officially paid, and then you don't have money for your books. But it wasn't like, because I was on federal financial aid, they kind of would know that you were in the system, and then they would like have to do this method of putting you on like a handwritten roster, and like, you know, they kind of like waived the fact that the money was late. But it was like, you know, that first year there, I was paying rent. I was moved out of I moved to the part of the city closer to the school, so I wouldn't have to have like a 90-minute commute one way, multiple days a week, because, you know, where my family's from, it isn't close. Well, it's not far, but it's like 30 miles away-ish, but it's, you know, LA traffic. So I didn't get to go too far. I mean, I didn't get to, you know, stay there living near the campus for too long, primarily because of the recession. And I'll talk in more detail about that later on in another episode. But yeah, that's kind of how school went for me. And then, you know, I took a year, was applying to grad schools. The reason why I started applying to PhD programs was because during the recession, during that time period, after the housing market crashed in 2008, I was basically doing a what do you call it? I was doing a sorry, my head is like so foggy right now. I'm tired. I was doing sorry, I totally lost my train of thought. So let me see. Oh yeah, so the recession and how it impacted after 2008. It definitely impacted my decisions as far as jobs and school, because once I graduated with my master's, I wanted just to do research, but I was applying at labs through like USC, places like that. I would have been making like $15 an hour on whatever project I was working on. I don't know if I didn't interview well, or maybe I just looked too young or didn't seem confident. I didn't really get any job offers. But also, I would ask, like how many people are applying, and like not like, full numbers, but like, is this a position multiple people are applying for? And they would usually tell me yes, like there's so many people. I did end up going to WorkSource during that year or sometime. So WorkSource in LA has like certificate programs that they can connect you to, like kind of free stuff, free waived kind of courses and all kinds of like free stuff, and even up to the point where you get access to working with a social worker for mock interviews, as well as employment support. They find you work to apply to and get you scheduled for interviews, and you get access, priority access to some of the job fairs. You can go in and submit your resume in person at some job fairs before the general public is let in. I mean, this is like way back in the day, so I don't even know if this even still exists, but that's kind of how it worked. In LA, it's called WorkSource. In other cities, like I don't know what it's called, but it's usually that like from California, it's on the ca.gov. It's one of those kind of community resources. If I would have followed through with that, I feel like it would have been very good. I learned a lot of good interview skills, just a whole lot of good skills that even today, when I listen to like Ken Coleman and Dave Ramsey and like all these other professional people who do like career coaching and like financial coaching and stuff, they definitely say a lot of the same things that these people were telling us in the classes, like how to how to write a resume, how to follow up, that kind of thing. It was just stuff that we were trained to do, and it was like a free class basically with resources attached to it. So I eventually ended up not following through with that program, because I was going to go to a PhD program instead. The reason why I was going to go into a PhD program was primarily because during the recession period, I was having such a hard time getting work. So I did end up tutoring for a No Child Left Behind program. It paid $20 an hour. This is before taxes. And, the only hours I could work were when the kids were out of school. So either weekends, which I couldn't do because of church-related stuff. So either weekends or after 3 p.m., whatever time they either got out of school, and you'd meet them at a public library or at their homes or a Starbucks or whatever for at least 1 or 2 hours at a time. And I think they had to do 120 hours. I don't remember how many hours, but each kid had a certain amount of hours they had to do for, math and English. And they were just basically teaching you, like kind of like trying to teach you how to do like what you needed to do. And then like it was pretty, like, yeah, that's all we really did. But the problem was, like, when you're driving like 90 minutes one way to work for like 3 or so hours, like you can't work all night because these are kids and they have school the next day. So it's like, 3 something, 4 something, you'd meet them. Some of them 5 or 6, you'd meet them. And if you try and get them in the same neighborhoods, they would usually give you a list in the same neighborhoods almost, so you could do back to back. So that kind of helped. But otherwise, it's, I wasn't making a lot of money. I mean, I did actually go on University Tutor and started tutoring from what I learned in research. I didn't follow up with that either, but I made good money. I think per Per one 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 assignment support, I guess, class or tutoring session, like people were willing to pay $100 for about an hour and a half of, I would review a research paper and just, talk formatting, talk, does it make sense, I didn't look at like the analytics. A lot of it wasn't like it wasn't like stats based, a lot of it, but I mostly looked at the design and methods and everything, and like $100, like wasn't bad, but I wasn't doing it like every day. But this was back then. So those are things I all enjoyed, but just usually in LA, the distance was an issue. And then just getting jobs where you're just working little by little, I didn't really ever think to scale up. I was like, oh, I got a gig, and just left it at that. My goals were more towards, I wanted to go into research still. And so the message I kept getting from people was, well, you don't have clinical experience. Well, you don't have clinical experience. You don't have clinical experience. No, I didn't have clinical experience because I wasn't doing anything clinically related to psychology. And so because I didn't have clinical experience, people were kind of booting me out and saying like, you're not getting the job because you don't have clinical. And, I was in a research experimental program for psych. I wasn't in a clinical psych program initially. Until I started the PhD program. And so I still have my master's, it's not my thesis poster, but it's it's a poster for a lot of the data from my thesis, but it was for like a conference on campus, I think. And so, yeah, I have that poster still. And even when I look at it today, I'm just like, I don't even think I could do that again. Like, it's just kind of crazy when I think of it. I'm like, wow, like, I did all that, Yeah, it took like 3 years, but it's like, geez, like that's a lot of work, And so, yeah, I was interested in doing the doctoral program, but just 3 years in, it just wasn't going to work out. Now, there was a lot of other kind of shady political stuff, but I do take ownership for the fact that I did have a role. I mean, it was my grades and my performance and my, kind of passivity on some points where it was just kind of my communication style. I felt like there were certain people that were kind of like jabbing at me and kind of like provoking me. So in a lot of the meetings that we had to have, these committee meetings, I did kind of take a quieter role, but mostly because I was pretty pissed off that people were like making assumptions, and I kind of didn't really speak up for myself. But then I also didn't have anyone else advocating for me. And some other things I learned, definitely, like there was definitely some mental health stuff involved, definitely some physical health stuff involved. Like it's probably TMI, but when I get like menstrual periods, I get like, I do get cramps, but I do notice it is attached to stress levels. And that time period, I remember having whenever I did have cramps, it was like the worst I've probably ever had in my life. Like probably for like a year or something. I was like, dude, this is like the pain was so severe I couldn't even like leave the house for like a day necessarily. I would just have to like sleep because that was the only thing comfortable, and I couldn't eat because I was nauseous and I'd vomit up anything. So it was kind of just like I wasn't able to really function at all for like a day out of, I don't know, every 24th day or so. It was just like that. And like when you're in a school that's really intensive, you don't really have time for that. And it's not like you can pick the day it happens. It just happens when it's going to happen on that day. And if it happens to be on a final, or if it happens to be when you got something due tomorrow, I mean, you gotta just deal with it, like. But also, I never really asked for extensions. I never really took a lower grade to get an extra day. I never really took days off, just for my own. I think one day only I did, because I thought I was gonna vomit, and I didn't even take the full day off. But I remember going to class later, because I had a lot of courses where I had one well, not one, but I had my own cohort of students I was with on the same kind of level as me. And we had a lot of us had back-to-back classes. So we had one class, there'd be I don't know, a 15-minute break between, and then we'd have our second class. And then a lot of us took the same class. And so I remember one class I didn't show up. And then the next class I did, and I think the classes were about 3 hours each. And so I remember going to that second class and kind of explaining to people what was going on. A couple people that sat around me, they're like, "Oh, where were you?" Somebody said you were sick or something. And I was just like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, why are you here? I wouldn't even come in if I, and I just never, I think back on moments like that where it's there were so many signs, even people telling me "Whoa, why don't you just go home if you're not feeling well?" Or why don't you take a day off, or this or that, And then I remember getting reprimanded in my first practicum because, we weren't getting the productivity we needed for our school to fully approve that practicum we did that year. And they told us this at a certain point where they're like, you guys are low, and your site needs to figure out how to get you the numbers you need to get for certain hours of things. And during that time period, I took, we were allowed to take 2 weeks off, which was 10 business days. And I took a 2-week vacation, but I needed that for my mental health. I don't think I took the vacation from school. I think I took the 2 weeks from the practicum, because I don't think I would have taken, or maybe I took it during a spring break or something. I really don't remember. This is so long ago. But my supervisor, who was not a good supervisor anyways, she told me it doesn't, whatever she said. I'm not going to get into it, but it was to the tune of, during a review process, she was saying, she took into account that I took 2 weeks off. And I was just but we're allowed to, but she was kind of focused on okay, you potentially could have finished as early as your other peers did, and you could have potentially, gotten your hours faster. I was into the summer, probably 2 or 3 weeks into the summer more than my classmates were, and I think I did have some miscalculations on my hours on my own end, so I think I stayed an extra week or something. But yeah, she was kind of what's going on kind of thing. But yeah, she did mention that. But that's something I had to learn too, was taking time off. I even remember when the practicum situation, once I was in my second practicum, because school didn't work out halfway through my second practicum, I still wanted to stay with the practicum because I was doing good at the practicum, and I liked working with the clients, and I felt I was learning how to do clinical work. And I remember, so this was basically how my school turned into work, was that I got hired because I was already at a practicum working for either free or for a $100 or $200 stipend a month. I think I was working for free, and then, I think I got a stipend both times, but it was just a couple $100. I spent it on gas every month. And then that's how I ended up, when the school year ended, my practicum had to end. But because I already had a master's degree from a previous program, and because I had at least 1.5 years of experience from working at the previous practicum and now that current practicum, that it meant that I would be eligible to be hired. And literally that next day, I got an interview set up by, the director who basically offered me the job that I was already doing, but as a full-time employee. Instead of I think I was there like 20 hours or 25 hours a week or something. So instead I just started working 40 hours a week, literally the next business day, and started getting a paycheck at a certain pay rate, and kept that same pay rate all the way up until 2020. So, and then I switched companies. I switched, I guess you call it branches within the same company, to a different style of work. Still clinical, but a lot different. And that's how I got where I am now. So my school route wasn't traditional, but definitely the economy did impact my choices with jobs in school. I don't know if I would have gone into a PhD program or tried to finish a PhD if people weren't telling me that I needed more clinical work, because I was like, well, I might as well get a PhD in clinical, because I already had a master's. So I was like, well, I might as well get a PhD. But that would have been more towards the private practice route. And I did know that I didn't want to permanently do that forever. I couldn't see myself at 65 years old, doing that. That wasn't really something that I had in mind, for myself. And so I noticed that, and I was like, well, I don't really see myself doing this when I'm like 65 years old. But I was, on the track that I could have opened a private practice if I would have finished the entire program and gotten licensed and everything. But yeah, that was kind of my school route. I don't know how it would have changed if the economy wasn't so bad, when I had graduated, from my master's program. And I don't know how it would have changed if I had, like if I had gotten a job, in the field. I don't know what my pay rate would have looked like. I don't know if I would have stayed, working. I don't know how I would have been. I don't really know how I would have, I don't know what would have happened, but I know what I tried to do, and I know what did work out, and what didn't work out as well. And so along that process, I guess the last point I'd want to make has to do with like student debt. Now I didn't have my own student debt until my master's program. I took out living expenses, I took out, tuition, and just emergent expenses. So that's when I started learning how to use financial aid, and especially because I had moved out that first year of grad school. Now before that, my family was supporting my bachelor's program, so they paid for it. I don't know if they had saved or what. I never actually was involved in that process. I just went to school, and passed and did well, and then moved on. And so that was fine. But I didn't know a thing about debt. I never studied it. I only heard from, parents and family members, everyone who's like, don't get anywhere near payday loans and don't get into credit card debt. And that's all they really tell you. There's no, I was never trained, nothing. That's about the extent of what people taught me. Even when I moved back the second year, I think the reason why I moved back, the second year of my master's program, the second out of 3 years of my master's program, like the reason why I moved back from the other part of LA, was because of how the financial aid was impacting my stress levels at that point. And it might have been my own self too. Maybe I just wasn't budgeting properly either, but I don't remember that. I do think it was because the student loans were coming late. I didn't have money really saved away. And my rent at the time was like, I think $675 or something for a master bedroom with like an outside like balcony deck, like that was connected to like someone else's sliding door. It had like a sliding door to the back door, to the backyard and then like an upstairs. I was upstairs, so it was like an upstairs master. I don't know if it was the master, but it was a pretty big sized bedroom, and I had like a sliding door, so I could slide the door out and walk out onto this upstairs. I guess it was technically a deck because it was pretty large. There was like a table that could seat 4, like a big kind of like round size table that could seat 4, and a couple lawn chairs, and it went almost the width of the entire back of the house. And then you could walk downstairs outside from that top deck, and if you walk downstairs you'd be on the backyard. So basically the way that house was built was on a hill, so you would park on the street. If you parked right by the steps, you would walk up the steps, and then when you came into the house you were already like at least 1 story up, because there was a garage, so the street level just had a garage. You would walk up the concrete outside steps, the side of this house, to get to the first level of the house, which was actually the second story. The second story was the living room, 1 other bedroom, I think a bathroom, and the kitchen and dining room. And part of that looked out onto it was like on a huge hill, so it looked out onto the city. And then the back part of it, if you went out through the back of the living room, there was a big sliding door by the living room and dining area. You could open that big sliding door and walk outside. That was the backyard level. So the backyard was uphill on the second level. And so to get to my room, I would go up the stairs inside the house, and from like near the kitchen. And then upstairs there was a studio bedroom that had like a little kitchen in there and everything. Another bedroom, I don't know, there's another bedroom that had a connecting bathroom to a room that was next to my bedroom. There was my bedroom, and then across from me there was another bedroom. So that house had a lot of rooms, actually, now that I think about it. And yeah, so some of the rooms were connected to that balcony, and then the other 1 room downstairs, or the ones facing the front of the house, weren't connected to the balcony. And then the downstairs room was connected to like the kitchen and all that. Like there was a door and a hallway and all that. But yeah, so basically that back then for that gigantic bedroom cost me like $675. And it was a lot of space. That's probably more space than I've ever had. And it came furnished with like basic furniture. And yeah, I moved in pretty easily and moved out pretty easily. Great house. I just unfortunately found out that the landlord passed away this year, and he was really sweet guy. I'm still in touch with like 2 of the roommates. They got married to each other and had a couple kids, and we got along good, but they moved, everybody moves, and like we all just kind of grew up and moved on. But yeah, I do like I did like that house. But yeah, I hope this is helpful. I this is my second recession I've been through, and I'm on an educational journey at the moment, but it's different than before. It's basically a certificate program where they guarantee connecting you to work, because they have leads and they have a good reputation. The program I'm studying through, and it's self-paced, and so I'll talk about that more once I'm done, but I do want to share that is contributing to me, slowly posting recordings. I hope it hasn't slowed down too much for people, but I do know that I'm posting a lot more slowly than before. But yeah, for now, that's kind of where things stand. And yeah, as far as the educational route, that's about all I can think of. I mean, I could technically still sustain my pay rate, even as low as it is compared to other contracts. Even if I hadn't moved and was paying the same rent, even if I had to move and had to pay probably the average rent, which would have still been sharing an apartment or a house at a little over $1,000, renting a room and being able to have access to like utilities and things. Yeah, that like a little over $1,000 would be coming out of pocket if I wasn't making any other decisions right now. Like if I wasn't like having goals for ages 40, 45, 50, if I wasn't having goals for like what I want my living situation to be like, where I want to live, who I don't want to live with, if I wasn't trying to change those things, I could still sustain, just I would have a lot less money, paying probably about $300 to $400 more a month in rent, and that's not to include how much food costs are, and that's if I had no other income. Like I could still make it, but it's just like I would never be able to reach all my other upcoming financial goals if I didn't change anything. So that's why this recession and inflation and everything is kind of leading me back into some form of schooling. But this route, the pay rate seems to be good. And the job doesn't seem to be emotionally overwhelming. I think I know the pros and cons of everything, to expect. And I kind of know myself a lot better with work, and with, how my mental, physical health contribute to, my work performance. I hope I'm using that word right. Like, I feel like sometimes people use the words performance and, like work ethic, almost interchangeably. Because I feel like those are two different things. Like, I feel like work ethic has a lot to do with, like, integrity as well. And, kind of like your attitude while you're working. Your motivation toward working versus performance, meeting kind of like what your job expects you to meet. When I say performance, I mean, like, am I at least hitting the marks that I'm supposed to hit daily, weekly, monthly? Am I way behind? Am I not, hitting productivity? I feel like work ethic does contribute to work performance. Like, part of work ethic can even be taking days off. I feel like just to make sure that the quality of your work and all that is as good as it can be, versus like letting your fatigue energy kind of take the lead. But yeah, we'll talk more about like career and stuff, but right now I just wanted to talk about education. That's kind of how education looked throughout my life, and just the generals of it. That's kind of how education looked in my life, and I hope this is helpful. But thanks for listening.